You are listening to I Survived the Wild Outdoors podcast, where real outdoors men and women share their heroic tales of survival. I'm your host, Brad Mathewson, and this is their story. Bees are extremely vital to the ecosystems for the role they play in pollination, but can pose significant dangers in wooded areas. For individuals with bee allergies, a single sting can trigger a severe reaction, including anaphylaxis, which is a rapid and life-threatening allergic response. Without prompt medical intervention, anaphylaxis can lead to death. Even those who are not aware of their sensitivity can be at risk, as initial exposure to bee venom can sometimes lead to severe reactions. One never knows where he or she might encounter a bee, or in my case, an entire nest of bees. So this story takes place back in, I think it was 2021. I had pulled a Wisconsin bear tag. Anyone who's listened to this podcast have heard some of my bear stories before and some of the dumb things that happen to me while I'm out bear baiting usually. Those of you that are new to the podcast, if you want to hear a crazy story, it's called My Skin's on Fire. It's episode 25. It's where I accidentally doused myself with, I think about a half, 3/4 of a can of bear spray. I was a mile back into a swamp. And, so if you want a good chuckle and learn what to do and what not to do with bear spray, I recommend that episode. So on this particular day, I was out bear baiting again. And like I had kind of explained in the past, I like to do things a little bit differently than most guys. I like to go deep in the woods, deeper than other guys, or try to find waterways that kind of make it a little more difficult, where people have to either canoe or kayak into a spot. So this particular spot, I had been baiting for, I think pretty much all summer. And it was getting to the end of summer, and everything was going well. What it was this large boggy area, and it had a channel. And this channel was, I guess, dug out years ago so guys could access the bog. Because if there's a lot of water out there, guys do duck hunt and goose hunt out there. But this particular year, the water wasn't very high, but it was just deep enough where I was able to take either a canoe or a kayak back into it. So like I said, a buddy of mine, his name is Les, and I've talked about him on the podcast. He was with me that day. So like I've explained, Les is a retired Army vet, and he's in his late 60s. He has a pacemaker. But it doesn't slow him down at all. And he just loves to get out in the woods. He's a former bear hunter, and he just loves to bait. So this day was, I think it was end of August, a couple weeks before bear season. And we were kayaking into this spot about midday. And what we would do is we canoed through this canal out into, just before we got out into the bog, I had cleared some brush where we could dock our kayaks, kind of pull them up on shore, and then we'd walk into the bait. So in this area is basically a big bog. So this was kind of like an island out in a bog, and it was a really good spot. I had a really nice bear coming in there. Anyway, so this particular day we kayak out, and we hadn't seen anything for bees or bugs, just your normal horse flies or mosquitoes. And on this particular day, as I started to pull up near shore where we normally pull our kayaks up into, I noticed a few bees. Like, that's kind of weird. I hadn't seen any bees before. And I have kept bees myself. So a couple years prior, I tried the beekeeping thing, which was all the rage across the the country. Everybody was getting bees from their local hardware store or co-op and raising bees. I did that for one summer, and I had a bee suit. And actually, I would say about 3/4 of the summer, I never wore my bee suit. I would just wear long sleeve shirt, and I'd check my bees, and I don't know, they would land on you, but I didn't freak out, and it was perfectly fine. But as summer turned into late summer, early fall, the bees started to get very aggressive because they had a lot of honey, so they're protecting their honey. Well, needless to say, I went on a trip, not to get all off topic too much, but I had gone on a trip for a week, and I had planned on when I came back, I was going to harvest all the honey. And when I came back, the bees had swarmed and taken, we figured, about 75 pounds of honey in 7 days and disappeared. So when I came back, my hive was empty other than maybe a couple hundred bees. But what I had learned is they're very aggressive. And I had been stung and had some allergic reactions. And since I was a kid, I've had different levels of reactions where sometimes it's just minor, where it's itchy and red, and sometimes where it's swollen up. I've gotten headaches, almost felt like a sour stomach, like I wanted to puke, and gotten hives. So I've had all different levels, I guess. It all depends on how many times I've been stung. So anyways, this particular day, when I pulled the kayak up, my buddy was a little bit behind me, which is a good thing. He hadn't quite pulled up yet. And when I pulled up, a bee landed on my shoulder, and I swatted it. And when I swatted it, and I should have known keeping bees. So these were not honeybees. So honeybees are pollinators. They go get pollen. They make honey. These were yellow jackets. Yellow jacket is really not a bee. They're scavengers. So they eat meat, carrion, which is dead, rotting meat. They're the ones where if you're out at a picnic and you see them hovering around the garbage can, they're yellow and black, the black stripes, and they're very aggressive. That's what these were. So when I swatted that bee, they actually released like a pheromone, and that pheromone can be smelled or sensed. Must be smelled, I assume. I'm not a bee expert. Like I said, I only kept bees for a few months, and they all swarmed on me. So I'm not the expert here, but yeah. So what I've learned from other people is, they release a pheromone, and the other bees attack. Well, what had happened when I pulled my kayak up, I didn't know it, but these yellow jackets were nesting in the ground. Now, I'd been baiting probably every 3 days. So I don't know when they started their little nest in the ground. But I had unknowingly pulled my kayak over the top of their nest and disturbed them. So when I swatted that one bee, I started to turn to grab my buckets, which I had ratcheted on the back of my kayak. And when I started to do that, all of a sudden I felt a sting in my neck. And out of the corner of my eye, saw another bee coming at my face. I swatted them. I suppose I must have released some more pheromones. And the next thing you know, I have an entire swarm of yellow jackets. I mean, hundreds of them. Like stinging me in the neck, in the face, in the eye, in the head. I had what's called, it's called the original bug suit. I highly recommend them if you guys are bear hunters or hikers. And they protect you big time from mosquitoes and black flies and even some yellow jackets, I guess. But I had that on, but I didn't have the hood up because it was a drier year. There wasn't much for mosquitoes, but I brought it along just in case. I had it on, but I hadn't zipped it up. So now hundreds of bees these bees are just stinging me. They're going, and I'm swatting them. So I'm making them more mad. So I take off running toward the bear bait. I get them off my face. I get my face mask zipped up, and I run, and bees chase me for, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 yards. And eventually I kind of lost them. And they lost interest or thought the threat was gone. So meanwhile, my buddy Les is looking at this, situation and wondering what in the hell, excuse my language, is going on here. And thankfully he stayed safe on the water. He wasn't going to come up. So here now, I don't know what to do. Luckily I'd gotten the pail off. So I walked into the set. I put my bear bait out, checked my camera. And as I'm doing this, my vision is starting to get a little blurry. I get a lot of tingling in my lips because I had been stung. Actually, I'd been stung above the eye. So my right eye was starting to swell shut. My lips were tingly. And I was starting to feel a little lightheaded, and it felt like my heart was just like racing. And I don't know if it was just the adrenaline from, being stung by all these bees, that got me going. So I started to walk back to the kayak just to kind of assess the situation. So as I'm walking back, I look at my kayak. And now I have a real brightly colored kayak. It's chartreuse, so it really stands out. So I don't know if the bees were attracted to that. You always hear don't have bright colors because they think it's a flower, but these bees were not pollinators. They're meat eaters. And very aggressive, which I was later learned that in the fall, they get really aggressive, especially if you bother their nest, which I did not do on purpose. So I walk over my kayak and there's literally hundreds of bees, and I started yelling for my buddy Les. And I look and he's about 50 yards down the canal. And he's like, I'm not going any closer. I'm not getting involved in any of this. And I'm like, well, I got to get out of here. So I end up, I sat there for a few minutes not knowing what to do. And like I said, I'm not feeling good at all. I'm feeling really lightheaded. Almost like I wanted to vomit. Like I said, my vision in my right eye was pretty much gone. That's because my eye was swelling shut. It looked like I had been punched in the face. And my lips were all swollen. I had stings. I don't know. I must have got stung probably about 50 times on my hands and my neck. Like I said, above the eye, on my head. So I don't have any hair. I got a real tight haircut. Kind of construction cut, and they stung all over on top of my head. So he's like, I don't know what you're going to do. I couldn't walk back because we were back in a bog. There was no way it was so thick, there's no way to walk out. So I took the bucket. I walked over to the edge of the bog. Now it's so thick, we had to actually chop out an area so we could get back, so we could just pull our kayaks up and to get back into this spot. So I filled the 5-gallon bucket up with about 4 gallons of water. And like I said, I don't have really good balance at this point. My equilibrium is kind of off. So I take the bucket and I just throw it. And about 4 gallons of water hit the kayak. I run to the kayak. I jump on. I push the kayak out and bees start. Now I exposed the hole that I didn't see, and it was huge. I would say it was about the size of a golf ball. And of course I got my mask up, and bees start shooting out just like crazy, kind of like fighter jets coming off of a ship out in the ocean, and they're just shooting out of there. So I'm freaking out. They got half a dozen or more bees trying to get into my mask. I have no gloves on, so they're laying on my hands, stinging my hands again. And so I had to do what I had to do. I just started stomping. I found where I could see their hole right next to my foot, so I just started stomping, kicking mud and stomping mud down into the hole. I had to stop them from coming out. So by that time, I'd been stung a few more times. And got in the kayak, paddled out. Now by this time, like, the pain's starting to set in. So my joints and my hands, I could barely use my kayak paddle. Like, just the worst, almost like arthritic pain through all my joints and my hands. And I've had like like 4 shoulder surgeries. And my shoulders were just locking up. Now, part of this is because when bees, these, like I said, these are wasp or yellow jackets, or when they sting you, any bee, it's venom that's in their stinger. It's not just the stinger. You think, oh, it's just that stinger comes out and then it's like, ow, just that pointy, almost like needle that pierces the skin. Sure, that hurts and it irritates the skin, but there's actually venom inside those bees. And like one sting is, you could handle it. It hurts, get a little achy. But now all of a sudden when you get multiple bee stings, this is where it can become very dangerous. And you don't have to be highly allergic to bees. If you get stung enough, they can definitely kill you. So my buddy at the time, he's, like I said, he's another 25 yards down the canal. He's like, are you all right? You right to go back, or you want me to tie a rope to your kayak and pull you back? I said, no, I'll make it. So it took us about, normally I can zip through there pretty quick. I can normally get in and out back in about 10 minutes. And it took me probably about 25 minutes to get back. And once I got back, then I got to be able to pull my kayak down a hill, and then back up a hill, and then out to the parking lot. So I did all that. It took me a lot longer than what it normally does. But when I got back to the truck, I pulled my shirt off, and we counted over 50 bee stings on my body. And like I said, I did drive back home, but I had to use almost like basically the palms of my hands in order to drive, because my hands were just, I don't know, they're almost like seized up. Like every joint in my fingers just ached. I could only see basically out of my left eye. I should have probably let my buddy drive. People are going to blast me for this, but yeah, it just a very dangerous situation. And like I said, unknowingly just bumbled into him. I had been baiting this spot for months. And every couple days I would go in and bait and pull my kayak up into the same spot. And, I would have thought if these bees were there, I would have encountered them in the past, and maybe they were there. And now it's just getting later in the summer, just kind of like my honeybees, where when I had honeybees, all of a sudden one day when it got later in the summer, all of a sudden they got real aggressive with me. And maybe it was the same type of thing where it was just later in the year and they're just protecting their nest. And I'm sure they were, but I had I was protecting myself too. But you really have to be aware when you're out hiking or, adventuring anywhere or hunting. Like you never know where you're going to run into bees and, be it a paper wasp in trees or these ground nesting bees. Now, I'd never encountered this before, and I hope I never encounter it again. So now I got home and I ended up just taking a really cold shower. I took some Benadryl and I chased it with a couple of ibuprofen. And I put ice packs on my eye and just kind of laid low. And this took me a couple hours and I started to feel a little bit better. The headache went away, and my heart rate started to slow down. Now, I didn't know if it was racing because of just adrenaline, because it was a scary situation. I never, when we were a kid, we used to dink around with bees a little bit. We'd have a bee nest or something at the house, and it would get behind the siding or something like that. So you'd go spray it with Raid or whatever, and you have a few bees come out and maybe got stung once or twice. But no, this was a full-on attack. If I wouldn't have had my bug suit on, I wish I would have had the hood up and zipped up. It's basically like it's a lighter weight, almost like a bee suit. But if I would have had that up, all I would have had is just stung in the hands. I wouldn't have been stung all over the face and my head. But yeah, thankfully I had that. I was able to zip that up and kind of protect myself. So yeah, that's my crazy bear story. Yeah, you folks just watch what you're doing out there and pay attention to Mother Nature, and you never know, what's around the corner, be it bees or even a bear. Ensuring your safety in the woods begins with being proactive. Always be aware of your surroundings and avoid areas where bees are active. Wear neutral, non-scented clothing to minimize attraction, and carry a well-stocked emergency kit that includes antihistamines, a first aid balm, and tools for removing stingers. In the event of a bee sting, quick action can make a significant difference. First, remove the stinger as soon as possible to prevent venom release. Clean the area thoroughly with soap and water, then apply a cold compress to alleviate pain and reduce swelling. Keep an eye out for severe reactions, such as difficulty breathing, swelling beyond the sting site, or dizziness. These could indicate an allergic reaction that requires immediate attention. And most importantly, stay safe out there and enjoy all that Mother Nature has to offer. If you like what you heard today, click the subscribe button to hear more upcoming stories. If you or someone you know have a survival story you'd like to share, contact me at isurvivethewildoutdoors@gmail.com.